Our next speaker from the U.S. is Ambassador John Bolton. He was UN's permanent representative to the United Nations for 2 years, from 2005-2006. Previously, he was Under-Secretary of State for Arms Control and International Security. He is one of the most tenacious fighters against a nuclear-armed Iran. And it's a great privilege to have him with us today. I give the floor to Ambassador John Bolton.
Thank you. A declared and unequivocal policy of the United States of America should be the overthrow of the regime in Tehran. The reason for that is we are in a race with this regime on several critical fronts. One is their 20-year pursuit of nuclear weapons, and the second is their support for international terrorism, where this regime has in fact become the world's central banker for terrorist activities. Let's take the nuclear front first. It is clear, and has been clear for some time, we didn't need Istanbul this weekend to explain it to us, that there is no way that the regime can be negotiated out of its nuclear weapons program. We have to understand negotiations, diplomacy are no different than any other kind of human activity. They have benefits and they have costs. And you engage in negotiation when the benefits outweigh the costs. That's simply not the case here. The fact is that whatever delay the Stuxnet virus has accomplished in the regime's pursuit of nuclear weapons, they remain extremely close to the capability. So the idea that we have very much time left is a delusion that only puts all of us at greater risk. I think that's why the support for regime change in Iran is so critical, because that will directly affect the leadership and could well have an effect on their policies. But let's be clear, it's not simply Iran's pursuit of nuclear weapons that should trouble us. Look at their support for terrorist activities in Iraq. Look at their support for a regime there that will threaten, once again, peace and security in the Middle East and beyond. Look at what Iran is doing in Lebanon. We just learned today that President Michel Suleiman, as expected, has appointed as the next Prime Minister Najib Mikati, with the full support of the Hezbollah bloc in the Lebanese parliament. We are on the verge of seeing the extinction of representative government in Lebanon. We see the spread of Iran's support for international terrorism having a detrimental effect all over the world. So when we look at the policies that the government of Iran is pursuing, we can see the pursuit of nuclear weapons, the support for international terrorism, and the repression of its own people. All of this is going on while the West talks and talks and talks. Now, with respect to the MEK and the consideration that Secretary Clinton is currently giving to delisting, let's be very clear. I think that the evidence is unequivocal that when the MEK was added to the list of foreign terrorist organizations during the Clinton administration, it was added under the very strongly held view that so doing would make the rulers in Tehran more amenable to the policies that the Clinton administration wanted to pursue, more amenable to engagement. If that was the calculation, it failed unambiguously. And I think the same feeling underlie the decision by Secretary Rice in 2009, just at the end of her tenure at the State Department, to continue the listing of the MEK, representing again the failed notion that this kind of step would make it easier to negotiate with the regime in the future. But I think there was an interesting and important point in Secretary Rice's last decision where she says expressly that the designation should be considered again in 2 years. That is to say, right now. Because I think that was an indication that she felt even then, even operating under the bias, Judge Mukasey has summarized the important aspects of the D.C. Circuit's opinion in this case, and I think that the submission that the lawyers for the MEK have made lays out in great detail what they're able to say about the information that they know about, the unclassified information. I think it's clear beyond any argument that political factors should not influence either the decision to list an organization as a foreign terrorist organization or to delist it. In the prosecutorial metaphor, you have to follow the facts wherever they lead. I hope she takes the hint that I think Secretary Rice gave her to revisit this in an objective way, unlike the circumstances under which the listing was made in the first place, and we'll see what happened. Thank you very much.
And we will now proceed with the list of our United States guest speakers. I think that we had the opportunity, and I am really most honored, we had the opportunity of having the cream of the United States political, judicial, military, and now academic world before us to address this very important issue. So we have now Professor Ruth Wedgwood. Professor Wedgwood is Edward Bowling Chair in International Law and Diplomacy at the School of Advanced International Studies of Johns Hopkins University. And she is a distinguished jurist on international law that, among various other things, represented for several years the United States in the United Nations Human Rights Committee. She is now going to also to address us. She is the last of this list of very prestigious American speakers. Please, the floor is yours.
Well, I think that it was wonderfully helpful to have Governor Richardson note his support for delisting the MEK, for re-establishing an American security presence at Camp Ashraf, and for support for the opposition in Iran. I have to say, what the Stuxnet virus is to atomic weapons, Camp Ashraf is to the regime in Tehran. It's the chrysalis, it's the incubus, I think, of its ultimate destruction. And there's no other reason or way to account for the fear that Tehran seems to have of 2,400 people who happen to live in a camp in Iraq, other than that they see the potential themselves, that the kind of almost martyrdom that is being imposed upon those people is, in fact, the test of the resilience of the Iranian democratic opposition. So I think Tehran is its own worst enemy in having impelled the Iraqis to attack Camp Ashraf over and over again. Now, the status of the people at Ashraf has been made the subject of some technical discussions. I very much endorse what Irene Khan said, that quite apart from the fact that the U.S. recognized their status as protected persons under the Geneva Conventions, and these are the conventions that the Obama administration has pledged to observe. We in the U.S. didn't fight the Iraqi war in order to install a pro-Iranian regime that would surrender the democratic opposition in Iran. I also do think, I served on the Defense Policy Board during a good part of the aughts from about 03 to 09, and had a valued and honored association with the American military in doing that. And certainly my view of the honor that is embedded in American military service is of a caliber that it would not be consistent in anybody's ken to surrender people that we pledge to protect. And the American military, above all else, honors the Geneva Conventions. Now, I very much agree with Iran Khan that the UN should be more vocal. I'm not aware that the High Commissioner for Human Rights has yet spoken out. The head of the UN mission for Mr. Ad Melkirk has made statements that I would consider at best tepid. As he said, those loudspeakers do not serve any reasonable purpose, and we have from the very outset asked the Iraqi government to make sure that those loudspeakers would be removed. When challenges arise, of course, we do not hide our concern if there is reason to do so. That's not the kind of blunt table talk that you need to strike fear into a regime. UNAMI needs a presence in the camp 24/7. There needs to be a presence of an American military outpost, restoring Camp Grizzly, forward operating base Camp Grizzly in the camp, so that there's some deterrent value against the kind of hooliganism that we've recently seen. I agree with Madam Rajavi that the issue belongs on the agenda of the UN Security Council, but this is an issue that even the Group of 77, which is the group actually of 132 countries of the South, must insist be put on the Security Council agenda, not only the agenda of the General Assembly. One thing I think Europeans can do is to police the enforcement of economic sanctions. The sanctions do not self-enforce. They have to be imposed by an act of political will. I agree with Governor Richardson that one should try to build upon diplomatic measures, but I do think that the old favorite aphorism of Washington has some cogency here. It's the old joke about baseball. It says that diplomacy without the possibility of coercion is like baseball without a bat. And unless you got a bat to hit the ball, ain't nothing going to happen. So I do think that whether or not one is in favor of regime change by kinetic means, nonetheless, there has to be a message that the patience of the West is not forever, that the Iranians cannot dig themselves out with China or with India or with new markets in the East, that this will be made an effective strangling hold on the undemocratic regime. I do not think I myself would ever have the courage to be a human rights activist on the ground the way thousands of people in Iran are. I'm just not that physically brave. Sometimes in academia I was brave because you're not allowed to dissent in academia. But physically I'm not brave enough. And therefore my invisible hat is off to the thousands and thousands of Iranian citizens who have the courage to brave torture and jail and death for the sake of democracy. And finally, I would just like to say I very much agree with John Bolton that this is not just any tyrannical regime. It has enormous strategic consequences for the world. When I was on Defense Policy Board, from non-classified sources, it was very much apparent that the rogue regimes were all cooperating with each other in dissemination of technology, in the sharing of intelligence, whether it was AQ Khan in Pakistan or the nuclear folks in North Korea or the nuclear folks in Iran. This has everything to do with the ability of Lebanon to survive, to bring Syria back into the Western camp, to try to make peace in Palestine. None of that will succeed until the viral infection of the Iranian regime is somehow eradicated. So thank you.